What is up, everybody? We are back with a brand new episode of Decompressed. On this episode, we're doing another behind the scenes look of the Richie wedding that I had this last weekend. It was an awesome wedding. Totally rained the whole entire time, but it made for killer shots, and we're going to go over that. And so here we are, just starting out the wedding. I've showed up, just starting to do some detail shots. We start off with the dress. This is an awesome Smoky Mountain wedding. It was just absolutely beautiful. The scenery, I know you can't see it in these pictures because it's really bright outside and I'm in a shaded environment, so that causes the background to kind of be blown out. And so I'm just trying to get some nice dress shots, just a couple of different angles. And as soon as I get done with that, I move on into other details of the venue, the reception, and stuff like that. Here we are. I'm taking just some ring shots here. She had some beautiful shoes. You always want to incorporate the shoes if they've invested money in them, and they're really nice. And these were in this case. And don't be surprised if your bride doesn't have nice shoes. Sometimes it just doesn't happen. It's not a big deal to them, but in this case it was, and it made for some really good shots. I really enjoyed using the marble on this, the top of this, side table here. It really made for some nice reflections and some nice shots with just doing some details of the rings. And here we are with the groomsmen and the groom and the ring bearer. And this little man had some lady killers for some eyes. He made for some good pictures. Now we're back outside, and this whole wedding party was totally awesome. Did not mind to get wet. It was pouring down rain. The last 3 weddings I've had in the last few days have just been downpours of rain, and all 3 have just totally embraced it, been willing to get wet. And don't be afraid to ask your couples if they're willing to get wet if it's raining. Some photographers freak out if it's raining, and sometimes you're limited on space. If they wouldn't have been so willing at this venue, it would have been difficult.
Look at me.
As you'll see later when we start doing like family pictures and stuff, there's really just this deck to kind of work with. The lighting inside was not that great except for a few spots, and so you'll see here we're doing a first look. This is the spot that is nice lighting. It's it's just kind of away from everybody, and so that's why we did the first look here. You got the mountains in the background. It was beautiful scenery. It was really beautiful all day, especially with the rain. The smoke, like the Smoky Mountains, were living up to their name that day. Here we are with the ceremony has just started, and when it comes to the ceremony, it's always a challenge. To me, this is almost some of the most challenging parts of the day because you want to leave as little of an imprint as possible. You want to be as quiet as possible, and that's why on a lot of these ceremony shots you won't hear any clicks coming from my shutter, and that's because I put it on silent shutter when I can. Now, one thing to keep in mind is when you're shooting with silent shutter, sometimes you can get banding, especially in Sony cameras, Sony A7iii, and the wedding that I did the day after this one, I was having banding when I was shooting the wedding ceremony, so I couldn't afford to put it in silent shooting, and you'll see that in the next video when I do their wedding. So here's the bride and her mom coming down the aisle. When it comes to the ceremony, like I said, you want to make as little of an imprint as possible, and sometimes that's difficult, and you'll see right here in just a minute why. Because sometimes you don't have a lot of room to move around, and you want to get different angles. Sometimes that's not an option, especially in these small, intimate weddings. Sometimes moving around is not really an option because you can see here there's only a very small gap between the very back chair or back rocking chair and the door, and so I was able to slide through there. I kind of adjusted that before the ceremony started just to make sure I could get around a little bit more, but on this deck there's just some angles that I would like to get, or I typically do get, that I wasn't able to. Also, on the ceremony, you want to make sure that you capture everything. Now, if they're just standing there looking at each other, there's only so many pictures you can take, and I don't really recommend wasting your shutter clicks on doing that. But anytime the groom is reaching for the rings, the bride's reaching for the rings, the bride's reaching for a bouquet, especially the kiss, all these things you definitely want to get, and you want to be ready in case there is laughter. You want to capture that laughter. So like I was talking about before, this is the family, and they're sitting out on the deck because this is the best spot. It is pouring down rain at this point, and this is the best spot to get the best lighting possible. And so that's always a thing to consider, like where's a decent background, where is nice lighting, especially when you're in inclement weather. You'll see right here in just a second that, you know, it still made for some pretty good photos for post-ceremony pictures of the family. I think they turned out really well. I'm pretty pleased with it, especially considering the situation that we were in. And once again, I've been so fortunate this year to have just such awesome, easygoing brides. I've got 32 weddings this year, and they have all, so far up to this point, have just been wonderful. I haven't had any of the dreaded bridezillas or anything like that. Everybody's just been so cool. And so here we are. We're just kind of taking some more pictures of family. You know, sometimes your bride and groom is going to want to do some quirky stuff, and that's always awesome. It makes for good pictures right here. This is the groom showing off his ring to his groomsmen and some of the other guys from his wedding. Now, here we go. This is the awesome part. It is pouring down rain. And fortunately, the venue had some umbrellas. It's something that I need to invest in personally as a photographer, just to have, just in case. But it worked out for this wedding. They had the umbrellas, and it made for some awesome opportunities. And you're going to see in just a little bit how awesome it was to have these umbrellas present. And also to have an awesome bride and groom who really just didn't care to get wet. I'm a big fan of movement. You'll notice that the more videos that I do with these, I don't like just standing poses. I do like to get them moving around and stuff. And I know that you'll hear that shutter clicking an awful lot. And I'm not just praying and spraying like some people say. But I just want to capture all the different emotions. Every single second, every single shutter click could produce a different emotion. Such as the one that you just seen right there. He was actually sitting her back down from doing the dip, and the dip is something that I'm a huge fan of, and then I do it pretty much every wedding. Now you'll see here I do have a flash set up behind the couple, and it made for some epic shots. That is that's actually the minister that is back there holding the umbrella over my flash, and everybody was so willing at this wedding to get involved. Everybody was excited to get involved. And that's one thing I want to encourage you. Don't be afraid to ask people in the wedding party to do stuff. You want to kind of gauge that, because obviously there's going to be people that you maybe don't want to ask that to. But I always end up asking somebody to help with something. It's usually a bridesmaid or a groomsman. But never be afraid to kind of ask for some help. They're usually excited about it, and they're usually really willing to, because they know that it's going to present a good outcome for the couple that they're there to see and that they love. And they're willing to help make that happen. And even if it's pouring down rain. And that's one thing that I love about weddings. Everybody comes together, and they're willing to pretty much do whatever it takes to ensure that the couple have an awesome day. And this was no exception. Everybody went above and beyond, and it made for just some totally epic shots. A little later on in this series on this channel, I'm going to be talking more about external flash and what you can do with external flash. But on a cloudy day when it's pouring down rain, throw a full CTO or a half CTO gel on a flash. I use the MagMod system, and it's awesome. Hold on, time out. Before we get back to that, you need to check out these shots. Unfortunately, the GoPro was not rolling during these shots because it was a spur of the moment thing where they were like, hey, we want to go out in the rain. And we totally embraced that. They killed it. They murdered it. It was awesome. It was epic. Probably one of my favorite shoots I've ever done. Totally epic. But you can see here the flash going off. I love flashes in the reception. I usually set them up diagonal from each other. You can see one right there. There was also one sitting right behind me. I usually do a 2 flash setup that they're totally, they're just opposite of each other. And it always makes for some beautiful backlighting, that halo, and then it also lights up your subject. I use the MagMod system. If you're not familiar with the MagMod system, I'll leave a link in the comments below for the system that I use. This was each one of my Godox AD200 flashes has a mag sphere and a mag grid on it. and it's totally necessary for doing reception shots. I always try to do a creative shot. You can see a blue flash going off right now. I always try to do something interesting, something different, and this right here was no exception. And I think it made for a pretty cool result. And it's amazing what you can do when you start introducing flash, external flash, to your shots. It can just totally change everything, especially once you figure out how to use it. Now, in this shot, you might not be able to see it. I actually had a groomsman, or not a groomsman, but one of the members of the party that was there who vapes. I actually had him down there vaping, blowing some smoke, because when that flash hits that smoke, it just kind of makes it pop a little bit more. I'm a huge fan of that. And usually at every wedding, I find someone who vapes, especially when it comes to send-offs, and I have them blow some vape right in front of the flash as it's going off. So here we are at the reception. This is the toast, and I've never seen two people so intimate about cupcakes and eating cupcakes and dancing with cupcakes, and it was pretty awesome. They you'll see in just a few minutes, they danced with those cupcakes. They had a great time. That's pretty much it. That kind of wraps it up. We got some killer shots of everybody dancing. Always make sure you get at least one picture of everybody in the wedding or the guests that showed up. If you like this content, if it was helpful, I would really appreciate that you subscribe, like this video, smash that bell button so you're notified of future videos. I've got several other videos like this that are lined up that I'll be dropping soon, and you don't want to miss that. And so if this is helpful, get interactive with me. Drop something in the comments below, and until next time, stay decompressed.